In today's video, we will learn how to make this irregular freehand crochet lace. There are lots of crochet projects that can be made using this technique. For example, I made myself a couple of lace coasters. They are irregular in shape, which I really like, and they have this modern feel to them. But I can also imagine a doily made with this crochet technique, or even a tablecloth, or perhaps even a summer top. But of course, before we start making any projects, we need to master this technique, and that's what we are going to do today. And for this crochet project, the phrase "practice makes perfect" applies really well. You may feel like you don't quite get the hang of it right away, but please don't give up and keep trying, because eventually you will. And once you do, you're going to love this technique, and it will open up the opportunities for making so many interesting and fascinating things with this crochet technique. For this project, I will use cotton thread size 10 and a hook size 1.25 millimeters. Usually when I work with cotton thread size 10, I use 1.5 or 1.75 millimeters hook. But for this project, I'm going to use a smaller size hook because I want my stitches to be especially tight and neat. So let's take a look at this lace. As you can see, it is made of different sizes and different shapes of cells. Some are big and some are small. The stitches that we are going to use here are chains, slip stitches, and single crochets. Single crochets look differently on the right side and wrong side, so we are going to crochet on this side always to ensure that our stitches do not mix, and that on this side we have single crochets that look the same, and on the back side we also have single crochets that all look the same. So let's get started. I begin with 15 chains. 1, 2, 3. So here I have 15 chains, and I'm going to use a slip stitch to join my chain into a ring. Next, I make one chain and I start making single crochets into the ring. I don't need to count my stitches because this is a freehand crochet technique, so the amount of stitches will vary. So here I continue crocheting into the ring. I try to crochet tightly and neatly, and sometimes I need to tighten my stitches a little bit, like move it along the chain so they look nice and neat. Here I covered about 2/3 of my ring with single crochets, and I'm leaving about 1/3 of the ring unfinished. Next, I make chain of 12. 1, 2, 3. Here I have 12 chains, and I'm going to drop the loop from my hook, and I'm going to insert the hook in about middle of my single crochets. It doesn't have to be precisely the middle one. I don't really count how many single crochets I have here. I just insert it somewhere in the middle, and I draw my chain loop through that single crochet. So basically I just joined my chain to the single crochet with a slip stitch. Next, I continue crocheting into this new chain loop that I just made. And again, I make single crochets. I don't even count them. I just want to cover about half of this new loop. Here is what I have so far. I have 2 unfinished chain loops, and I'm gonna leave them for now. I will finish them later. And now I make a new chain, and the previous chain I made, it was chain of 12. Now I want to make a smaller cell, so I'll do 7 chains this time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And again, I'm dropping off the loop from the hook, and I insert the hook somewhere in the middle of this arc of single crochets that I have, and I join my chain. So now I have this small chain loop, and I make single crochets into it. tighten them a little. So here I have this tiny cell and I leave this half unfinished and I make another chain. Let's see, this time I want to make a bigger one, so I'll go with 13 chains. 2, 11, 12, 13. And again, I will join it. I can join it here or here because it's a freehand crochet. It's really up to me. So let's do it here. Now I have a new chain loop and I continue making single crochets into this new loop now. Here I covered about 2/3 of my new chain loop with single crochets. And again, I make another chain. Let's see, maybe this time I'll do chain 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I will insert my hook in the middle of this same arc that I just made. And I join. So now I have a new loop and I continue making single crochets into this new loop. Here I covered about half of my new loop with single crochets and I'm ready to make my next chain. I can make maybe something like chain 12 and join here, or I can make a longer one and join all the way here. Let's see how it's gonna look if I join it here with a longer chain. So maybe chain 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And I will join it over here. So now I have this big loop to work into, and that's what I do. I just cover it with single crochets. And this time I covered only about 1/3 of my entire loop with single crochets. And I notice here that I have one stitch here that's a little bit loose, but I want all of my stitches nice and neat. So I'm going to undo it, go back to that stitch, tighten the thread and redo my stitches because I want them all nice and neat and tight. So here I am again at that big loop and I covered about 1/3 of it and I'm going to make another chain. Let's say chain 12. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And I will join it to this loop over here, the stitch over here. So here's what I have so far. So I got to the point where I have chains, unfinished chains all around my crochet piece, and I'm going to start crocheting in the opposite direction to cover them all with single crochets. Here I covered one loop with single crochets and I'm going to continue all the way around. So now I covered all of my chains with single crochets and this is what my lace piece looks like. Here I am at the point where my very first single crochet was made. Remember the original chain that I joined into a ring, and then I started crocheting and I covered 2/3 of it. So finally I finished that ring and now I'm going to join it with a slip stitch to the very first single crochet so there is no gap over here. And looks much better now. And now I continue to crochet the same way. I make a chain and I don't even need to count my chains either. just somewhere between 5 and 15 chains. I drop it off the hook. I insert the hook either here or here, somewhere to the right of my chain. I join this new chain with a slip stitch. I cover it with single crochets. I cover either 1/3 of it or half of it or 2/3 of it with single crochets. Like for example, here I covered 1/3. I make a new chain. I don't even count because it's a freehand crochet. Maybe I'll make it a bit longer. And then I kind of glance where would it look nice to be joined. Somewhere here. I join it. Again, I cover it with single crochets. Maybe this time I will cover half of it. Here I covered half of that loop, and I see that one of my stitches here just doesn't look right. It's a little bit loose, so I'm going to undo it to that point, tighten the thread, and redo my stitches because I want them to be nice and neat. Then I might need to move them a little bit so they all lay nice and flat. Maybe I'll add a couple more. Then again, I will make a chain. I will join it to the right of the hook, somewhere here or here. And this is the way I'm going to continue crocheting. Here I made a few more loops, and right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 unfinished chains. And I can either continue crocheting this way, making new chain loops and go this way, or I can go and crochet single crochets all over these unfinished chains. And I think that's what I'm going to do. Here I covered all of my chains with single crochets, and this is what my irregular lace piece looks like so far. Maybe if it was made in blue, this could be a cloud applique or something. It looks like I hit a dead end here, because if I make my new chain from this point and join it somewhere to the right, it's just not gonna look good. So instead, I'm going to use slip stitches to get somewhere over here on this next loop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now I can make a new loop from this place. I will make a new chain, drop it off the hook, join it, cover a portion of it with single crochets, then make a new chain, drop it off the hook, join it, cover it with single crochets, and just continue crocheting like that. Here I made a few more loops, and again it seems like I am at the point where I just need to use slip stitches to move along the next loop to be in the right place to continue my work. So maybe I can start making chains from this point. My crochet piece has this weird shape right now, but that doesn't bother me because the objective of today's video is to simply learn this technique. Once we master this crochet technique, we can make a variety of crochet projects. But for now, we need to learn estimating the following things. How long do we make our chain loop? Somewhere between 5 and 15 chains. Then how much of it do we cover with single crochets? Either 1/3, half, or 2/3. We also need to learn to estimate how many single crochets should go into one loop so that our crochet piece lays flat. It doesn't ruffle and doesn't cup up. And once we get handle of this crochet technique, we can start making crochet projects. They will come in the future videos.